Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my May 2021 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but today we're just going to talk about the books. We're going to start with my nerdy hardcore stats and charts, and then get into what I read. In May, I read 23 books for a total of 6,550 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so 3,136 of those pages were actually about 92 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 12 adult books, 8 YA books, and 3 middle grade books. I read 17 novels, 4 anthologies, and 2 graphic novels. This month, the biggest chunk of the genre pie was contemporary, followed by nonfiction, mystery thriller, fantasy, historical fiction, poetry, and science fiction. If you adjust by page count, it stays pretty predictable. Most of these books were from the library, but I did read some from NetGalley, publishers, a chain bookstore, and the Life's Library. I read 10 audiobooks, 5 ebooks, 5 paperbacks, and 3 hardcovers. About half my books were my usual 300 to 399 pages range, and all of them were published between 2010 and now. About half of these books were by female authors, a quarter male, and a quarter non-binary. Half the protagonists were female, but then the other is a mixture of male, non-binary, dual perspectives, ensembles, and non-gender specific nonfiction. In terms of setting, the US is taking up a lot of the pie, but Canada, Pakistan, and other worlds sneaked in there. In terms of diversity, nearly a third of what I read was intersectional, and only 2 books didn't have discernible diversity. In terms of star ratings, this month I had 1 3-star book, 4 3.5-star books, 8 4-star books, 3 4.5-star books, and 7 5-star books. Let's start with our lowest rated read and work our way up to the highest, shall we? My 3-star read this month was Dead Endia: The Watcher's Test by Hamish Steele. This is a graphic novel and it's a little bit complicated to explain, but the best way to explain it is it's about these characters that work within an amusement park, and more specifically at a haunted house that actually has a portal to different dimensions. As you might guess, this has elements of magic, it also has elements of time travel. What I really liked about this was the characters. The plot I was kind of hit or miss on. One of my 3.5-star reads, the first one being What Big Teeth. This takes some elements from fairy tales such as Little Red Riding Hood and then completely mushes them all together for this story. Our main character has been away at boarding school for I believe it's about 7 years and is finally coming back, not because her grandmother said that she could, but because she just needs to, and you find out why in the course of the novel. But when she gets to her family house, you realize that their family is not really like any other family you've met before. A lot of them are werewolves, one of them is a witch of some persuasion, and there's this weird guy who's a family friend that just kind of hangs around the house, and everyone seems to be real into him. This is one of those books where as I was reading it, I wasn't going to give it the highest of ratings, and then once we got closer to the end, I could see a little bit more of what the author was trying to accomplish, and I liked it a little bit more once it started ramping up near the end. Basically, that translates into this was kind of a bit of a struggle bus in the middle of it, but I really liked it by the end. Next, we have Geek Elders Speak in Our Own Voices. This is a compilation of female geeks just telling the world about themselves and their geekery. Although this is a very important piece of nonfiction, with the way it was structured, it became very repetitive. It felt like everybody was given the task of write your geekish life story without any more caveats to what they should be doing, and because of that, since a lot of them have overlap in what their geekish stories are, it felt like you were reading the same thing over and over and over again. Additionally, a lot of them made the same asides, like, and that was before the internet, and reading that over and over and over again wasn't the best experience. This is the type of thing that if you read 1 or 2 essays at a time, you probably won't notice all of this overlap, but if they'd been given specific things to talk about, I think it would have been a little bit stronger of a collection. Next we have We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Barry. This one is set in the 1980s and it centers a field hockey team that also becomes a coven. They go off to this summer training session. One of them previously found a book about witches in the library because they're very close to Salem. In fact, they're in Danvers, which is where a lot of the witch trials took place. And they start basically doing the dark deeds of a dark entity so that they can win their games. This is one of the ensemble books that I read this month, so you really get to know all of these different people on this field hockey team. And then at the very end, you also get to see how they are like 25 years later, something like that, and how everything resolved itself. I thought this was going to be a lot more to do with meeting that dark entity movie, and that's something that may or may not happen. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I didn't really know exactly what to expect going into this, but I overall really enjoyed it. There were a couple of characters in this which were actually just physical characteristics of a couple of the girls that got their own personalities, and I found that really intriguing. Next we have How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia. This one is written as though it is a self-help book, and it is written in the second person. So it's written as though you are going through this life as a person in Rising Asia. This book didn't use any names of places or people, so for the purposes of trying to figure out where to set it in my world, I set it in Pakistan simply because that is where the author is from. In this book, you go through several experiences, from moving from a village to a city, what happens to your family, what happens to your love life, what happens at the end of your life, and I found it a really intriguing format. On to my 4-star reads, the first one being Hurry Home. This is the one I picked up for this month's Buzzword-a-thon because it was house or home as the buzzword. This one is a mystery thriller, and it's dual perspective between these two sisters. When they were younger, something tragic happened in their life. I won't tell you what it is off the bat because you don't know. And ultimately, because of that, they've lived very separate lives for about the past 10 years. However, one of the sisters shows up at the house of the other sister, and you are now uncovering their past as well as trying to figure out which one of them, if not both of them, is an unreliable narrator. This is a book where I figured out the major plot twist well ahead of time, but I still really enjoyed my time with it. Next, the poetry collection I read this month was Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. This collection encompasses the author's experience of growing up Black and queer, and we all know I don't have many intelligent things to say about poetry, but I keep trying to read the collections that I know people really resonate with because I want to try to experience it, even though it doesn't dig that deep into me. That sentence makes me feel like I'm misrepresenting myself. I do feel things while I'm reading the words on the page, but they don't stick with me, and that's a problem with poetry, not a problem with this specific poetry. Next we have The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. This is a collection of, I believe, 7 or 8 basically short stories about these different women who have grown up in the church in the south of the United States and where they are in their lives. This has secrets to do with their love life, whether that means they're queer or they're having premarital sex, or in one case we get the perspective of a daughter whose mother is secretly having an affair with the pastor. This was short and bittersweet, so if you're still looking for something that covers the religion square for Queer Lit Readathon, this definitely counts because some of these characters are in fact queer. Next we have The Oracle Code, and going into this I only knew that the author was Marika Nijkamp. I didn't know that it was a Gotham City book. I didn't know it had to do with Barbara Gordon, and I was delighted when we got there. In this graphic novel, Barbara Gordon has had an incident where she no longer has use of her legs, and she's going to this halfway house to learn skills for her new life as a wheelchair user. Once she's there, a mystery unveils itself, and obviously she needs to solve it. I believe this is a one-off, and that's a shame because I would love to read a series of her stories. Next we have a mystery thriller, and that's The Lost Ones. This one takes place primarily in Vancouver, which I didn't know when I picked it up. I can't remember why I picked it up, I just did and was delighted that it takes place really close to me. In fact, there's a section of it that takes place in the Comox Valley, which is where I'm originally from. I'm an army brat, but that's where I'm from as of age 12. This one was about a woman named Nora who one day is woken up by this guy who says, "I think you might be able to help me find my missing daughter." So she shows up to the meeting, and it turns out that the child that has gone missing is the child she gave up for adoption 15 years ago. She initially tells the couple that she hasn't heard from their daughter, but then she goes into investigating it using skills that she's gleaned from being a researcher, which is her current job. She has an incredibly intense backstory, and this definitely goes through a lot of twists and turns. Some of them were things that were a little bit over my head. There were a lot of moving parts and different characters, and there were sections of this where it went into very political things that I personally have a harder time grasping, but overall, this was very intriguing. This talked about so many contemporary Canadian issues without beating you over the head with them, and I really want to read the rest of the series. I believe it's the first in the series. I don't know if the second one's out yet. I'm going to check and see what I can do about reading more from this character. Next we have The Ghosts We Keep by Mason Deaver. I actually got an arc of this one, so it has just recently come out, and I actually did a whole reading vlog about it, so I'll be sure to link that down below. Essentially, this is a book about grief as our main character's older sibling has died in a hit and run, and it's all about just trying to figure out where you go from there. It was beautiful and poignant and difficult, and if you want to know more, again, I have that entire reading vlog. Next we have The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. This is a YA mystery thriller about these three cousins who receive a letter from their grandmother, who they've never met before, who actually disinherited all of her children, their parents. And the letter basically says, come to my island, because she's super rich, she has her own island and there's tons of resorts on it, and work for me this summer so we can get to know each other. All of the kids are kind of hesitant about this because it seems like a really weird ask. However, all of their parents really want them to go because you never know, they might get back into the will. They don't know why they were disinherited in the first place. From here, there are so many different twists and turns, so many that some people will be incredulous about this plot, but I don't go into these books thinking that I'm going to get the most airtight plot and that everything has to be super realistic. Sometimes it's fun to suspend your disbelief. There's been this fly in our house for like 2 days now and we can't seem to get it to leave, and it's really loud, and it woke me up this morning and now it's buzzing around while I'm trying to record this video. So if at any point you hear buzzing, I'm sorry. Go away! I've gotten up at least 5 times to try to get this fly to just go outside and it won't. Next we have The Only Black Girls in Town by Brandy Colbert. This is a middle grade novel with a little bit of a mystery to it. Our main character and her 2 dads have been the only black family on their street since they moved in a decade ago. They live in a relatively small, very white California tourist town, and mostly things have been fine, although one of her neighbors is definitely a racist. All of a sudden this black mother and daughter move in across the street at the old bed and breakfast, and while the daughter's cleaning out some things in the attic, she finds some letters that lead to a mystery. I really love the characters in this book, how they related to each other and how they grew throughout the book to have more of an understanding of the world around them, as well as the mystery. I personally figured out the mystery well ahead of the protagonists, but the protagonists are 12 and I am not. So that's not something I hold against this book. I was actually very interested to see this type of history depicted. But I'm not going to tell you what it was, because you should read it for yourself. On to my 4.5 star reads, the first one being Catfishing on Catnet. This book has 2 perspectives. One of them is Steph. She is been on the run with her mother for as long as she can remember, and pretty much every month or 2 they pack up and move to a different place because the mother is running from the father, who has done some evil things that you come to learn about throughout the course of the book. The other perspective is an AI that created this social media site called Catnet, which is the only social media that Steph has. Basically, her only friends are in her clouder on Catnet. I thought this was a fascinating premise because we have this AI character that has its own free will and just wants to help their friends, and I really enjoyed that, especially when it mixed in with the danger of whether or not her dad is actually some form of evil and what the clouder can do about that. This is actually the first in the series, so hopefully I'll actually remember to continue the series after this. Next, I read an advanced reader copy of 1500 Miles from the Sun by Johnny Garza Villa. This book is about Jules, who late one night when he's at a party and drinking a little bit too much, accidentally comes out over Twitter. Initially, all his friends and his sister are really supportive, but he hasn't told his dad yet because he doesn't think he'll have the support from his father. One of the happy unintended consequences of coming out online means that a cute boy, his Twitter crush, actually slides into his DMs and they start up a relationship. I very much enjoyed this because at the root of every good relationship is communication, and because these 2 people are so far away from each other physically, they had to have great communication, and I love seeing that represented. This book was a mixture of the very hard things that Jules has gone from, but also the love from his family and his friends and Matt, who, does he eventually get to meet him? Maybe. This month I also read If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy, which is the first in a companion series being put out by Disney about Disney princesses when they're grown up in a contemporary setting. In this one, our main character is a plus-size fashion designer, and her stepmother is actually the executive producer of this very famous dating show. When she gets home after graduation, she finds out that a couple of the contestants from the show have actually dropped out, so she and her stepsisters join the show, mostly to boost their personal brands and hopefully get a good job out of it. However, once she's on set and finds out who the bachelor is, there's a really good chance that she's going to fall for him. It's no surprise that I love this. I love Julie Murphy's works. I love that this was incredibly body positive. I really loved the dynamic between the characters and this weird competition setting. I just really enjoyed it all, and I'm interested to see what other princesses are going to get modern day remakes. On to my 5-star reads, the first one being The Backstagers and the Final Blackout. This is the third and I think the final installment in the spin-off novel series to the graphic novel series of the same name. Since this is the third in a series, there are certain things about this plot that I really shouldn't get into because it's spoilers for the first 2 books as well as potentially for the graphic novels as well. However, what I can tell you is I love these characters. I love seeing this weird backstage world of fantasy and adventure and people just wanting to get along and do the best that they can, and this series just has such a huge part of my heart. Next we have The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. This is a collection of essays that rates things and concepts from the Anthropocene on a 5-point scale. This came about because John used to work as a book reviewer and has written hundreds if not thousands of reviews of books, and he's used this format to write these very winding essays about topics that you might not think twice about otherwise. I've been following the work of the Green brothers for years, so a lot of these essays I was at least partially familiar with, either from listening to the podcast of the same name or watching John's videos on the Vlogbrothers channel. I even had the honor of seeing him read a couple of these essays live at the second PodCon in Seattle. Since I am so familiar with his work, I also hear his voice in my head when I read his words, which is a concept that I personally give 5 stars because that feels just special somehow. Next we have The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp. This one starts out with this girl going to the bank with her current girlfriend and her ex-boyfriend, and she's expecting it to be a very awkward morning because he just found out about her girlfriend very recently and there's some hurt feelings going on. However, this situation swiftly turns into a bank heist and she is uniquely suited to get them out alive. You see, growing up, our main character's mother was a con artist and she often used her daughter in her cons, so she has learned some things from her past existences that could definitely thwart these people, because ultimately she just wants to keep her best friend and her girlfriend safe. I really love this one. I really enjoyed seeing how this heist progressed, but then also seeing all these things that happened in her past to make her the person that she currently is, as well as this dynamic between her girlfriend and her best friend who she used to date and what all of that means. Additionally, the rights to this book have been sold to Netflix, and I believe that Millie Bobby Brown is going to be playing the main character, and I am very excited for that. Next, we have a memoir called From the Ashes, My Story of Being Métis, Homeless, and Finding My Way by Jesse Thistle. This man and his 2 brothers did not have a very safe home life growing up. They originally lived with their mother, and then their father basically took them from their mother and didn't take care of them, so they ended up being taken away and taken to his parents' place, so they ended up being raised by their grandparents. His grandfather also didn't get much of a childhood because he was also orphaned at a very young age, so he grew up very quickly, and he expected that of these boys as well. Because Jesse's father had addiction issues, the grandfather had no time for that, so when he found out that Jesse was using, he kicked him out of the house. What follows is a deeply personal life story, and it always feels a little bit weird to tell you somebody else's actual life story, so I'm going to leave it at that, besides to tell you that I highly suggest picking this one up. The writing and the vulnerability were just incredible. My battery is about to die, so I'm going to change that and then come back for the last 3. Next we have They Said This Would Be Fun by Eternity Martis. This is a mixture of memoir, statistics, and just the state of the collegiate world in Canada. The author of this collection is Black and ended up going to a majority white college in Ontario and faced a lot of prejudice there, not only from the institution itself, but also just from random students that she would encounter. Because this is a terrible fact of life for students of color, they have a lower rate of graduation because of the mental health strains they face from casual and rampant racism. This collection was both informative and personal, as we got to know a lot about her backstory and the issues that she specifically faced that were very specific to her, and then issues that are recognizable to people of color on a broader scale. Both this and From the Ashes are perfect things to pick up if you're Canadian and you've bought into that stereotype that Canadians are just way nicer than Americans and we've done no wrong, because we definitely have, we definitely continue to. The penultimate book on this list is Fortune Favors the Dead by Stephen Spotswood. This takes place in 1945. It is a detective novel sort of thing. Our main character is queer and I loved it. This is written in kind of a memoir format, so we know that our main character, Will Parker, is basically writing about these cases. So we see when she first gets to meet Lillian Pentecost, who is a famous lady detective who she eventually starts working for, and then we kind of skip forward to this first most interesting case of their lives together. This is also the first in a series, and I really want to read the rest of them, but they're not out yet, and that is not good for me. I want to read them now. Usually Lillian deprioritizes cases that have to do with rich people because she doesn't feel like their cases should be more important than people that can't afford exorbitant fees. But the case in this book is an honest-to-God locked room mystery, so Will urges her to take it on. I highly enjoyed the writing style of it. It was very funny in parts, and like I said, I can't wait to read the rest of them. My favorite book, without a doubt, this month was Ace: What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. This should be required reading. Not only is this an excellent primer for understanding what asexuality and aromanticism are, but it goes even further than that, and it looks at the intersections of different marginalized identities and how that can affect whether or not, one, you know what being ace is, and two, figuring out that you identify with it. Because of compulsory sexuality, I didn't know that being ace was a thing for a very long time, and once I found out what it was, I realized that I fall under that spectrum. And then suddenly a lot of things in my life became more clear. However, every culture has different pressures to do with sexuality and what's right and what's normal and all of that type of thing. So if you're at the intersection of any marginalized identities, realizing you're asexual and having that be something that is accepted about you becomes increasingly more difficult. I listened to this one as an audiobook from my library, and less than a chapter into it, I knew that I needed my own copy, which I will eventually pick up because this is fantastic. Like I said, this should be essential reading. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend picking it up. If you want to hear me talk more about these books, or other books for that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always listed down below. If you've read any of these, or you plan to read any of these, please let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment, but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my PayPal and my Amazon wishlist in case you would like to buy me a book. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!